Hi everyone, this is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching with today's video, which is 262, and I am glad to be back. I'm ready to do something smaller. There's still one more t-shirt quilt out there, but I can take my time to do that one. So this was a nice project. You have to do a little bit of thinking, and I'm going to try and help you figure out that one or two little pieces there. And that said, I'm going to look at the sample. I want to talk about the patches. We're going to look at the blocks. We're going to talk about putting the top together. The last video, I had to move to another room, and now I'm back in the workroom. So you just please look around my storage and things that I have. But this is the quilt, and you can see that the rows are diagonal. They're going to have 4 rows. There's a little top row, then the 2 middle rows, which are longer, and then a little one at the bottom for the bottom point. And I'm trying to decide which one of the colors I want to put on the back. And I'm not sure either one of those will work, but it might. So you can see this is a collection of 2.5-inch blocks and 2.5 by 4 inch. And this uses a 3-color combination. And that's really fun. And I actually went on the computer and looked at different ways they had put 3-color combinations together. And that was fun. And I finally came up with this one that I did, which was the blues, the orange, and the yellow, because they go together really well. What I'm going to show you in a minute is an orchid, a brown, and an orange, which is a little bit different. So let's visit the patches that go into this. And you can see that I've got my orchid stack, I've got my orange stack, and my brown stacks. But if you look at it, you can see that there's a lot more for the purple and a lot more for the brown, and that's true. And at the very top, it tells you what goes with the colors. So for example, color 1, which is going to be my purples, my orchids together. And there's going to be a stack of 2.5 by 4.5, and you only need 12 of them. And try not to make them all the same, but you can repeat, because it's funny how you don't see them that much on there. And this next one is the 2.5 squares, and it takes 24 of those. And I liked it because it don't make all of them all 24 separate, but don't make clumps of them, like 5 of them the same color. And then the one in the middle is the second, is what I just called color number 2, and that's my orange, and that's 2.5-inch squares. There are 24 of those. And then color 3 does a repeat. We're going to have the 4.5 by 2.5, and only 12 of those, just like at the first pile. And then, like all of the piles, we're going to have 24 of the browns. And when I got ready to put it together, I've already put some squares together. I like to lay these out as I started, and I just sort of go down the stack and pick things that I'd like. And then these are the white fabric that hold those blocks together. And you'll see that there are 5 stacks, and I've got each one labeled. And like the first one is 4.5 by 18, but there's only one of those. And there's 4.5 by 42, and there's only one of those. Because remember, these are going to be going diagonally and connect the blocks to each other. And then there's different sashings that you'll see. The one on the right-hand side, the 6, it's 4.5 by 10.5. I put a little star by that. Be sure that the 10.5 is 10.5. You're not too short. I almost did that one of them too short. And then after that, there are 2 more sections. And that first pile, I knew I would have it somewhere. It says an 18-inch and a 42-inch. Well, those two are sewn together because they make the large connector in the square. And I'll turn around and go back to that. But that's the white for all of that. Now let's travel back over here. And as you look at the center, it's this one right here. It's going to go all the way across, so it works well to, and then it has pieces that stick out on the end, and when you get totally done, you will take and cut those to make the square corners on those. And the one that there's the most of is the 10.5. There are 2.5 by 10.5, and if you look at this block, which is going up and down right now, you can see the 2.5-inch colorful strip and then a 2.5-inch white. That's the 10.5s that I was talking about. And that makes a block. Those 3 colored parts and the 2 whites make your block. And there's no easy way to show this except to show the diagram. And you can see the long white strips, and you can see the 4 complete boxes in the middle. You're going to make 2 different patterns of colors. One's A patterns and the other one's B, and I'll show you that. But then you're going to take, you've done 4 of a pattern A and 4 of pattern B. You're going to take 2 of each of those, A and B, and you're going to cut it on the diagonal. And I'll show you that as we go. And that's how it fits together. I thought that's a good way to see that. And this is the way the block goes together. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. You've got 3 of your colorful strips, and then the 2 white strips that follow that. And now you'll start to see where the colors go, and I'll show you a way to get to that. And you can do it by looking at the samples that I've got and looking at the other sample. But this is for you to know this is the way it goes, whether you're doing block A's or block B. They are both set up in the same way. So I put together a block A with my new colors. And if you look, if you remember, my first color was orchid. Well, if you look at this, block A, you can see where all the orchids fall. There are 2 in the top row, 1 in the middle, and then 2 on the bottom again. And that's a good example of the patterns. And then look at your browns, because here again, you've got brown, 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 brown. You've got with the one long one, and then the 3 2.5-inch blocks. That leaves you the orange that you've got left. And if you look at this, only 3 oranges appear in there. And if you remember, we didn't have to make any long strips. And those are, so that's always where the orange is going to fall. Okay? So then, trying not to confuse you, but we're going to make, you make 4 of those, and you put any color, no, you don't mean color, but an orchid goes in an orchid, but you don't use the same block necessarily. That's why you've got that nice collection of blocks. The same thing about your 2.5-inch squares. These blocks are not going to look alike. They don't have to look alike. All right, and I think I'm going to introduce you to the B block. Let's see. I wanted to set it so it'd be closer. All right, well, let's just look at this one. All right, so this is B block. It's the same pattern of 4.5 by 2.5 and 2.5. But what you're going to do is you're going to exchange. You're going to exchange the purples for the browns. And you'll see the oranges stay right where they were. But every time you had a purple in your first set, you're going to exchange that for a brown. So I've gone from the corner to the corner is a brown, and the other corner was a light orchid, and it's now a dark brown. And that's, you're just going to change those positions for those two colors. All right, and there again, you're going to make 4 B's, 4 of the A's and 4 of the B patterns. And remember, we're working with just 3 colors, so that's neat. When I got ready for my A blocks, I made all 4 of the A blocks. I laid them out, and I put them on my soft board that I carry. And so I actually had 1, 2, 3, and 4 all set there. And I sat down and I sewed the first one together and pressed it, sewed the second one, third one, and fourth one. And I just put those in a pile. I labeled it A. And then I changed over to the swap out for the 2 colors that had the most things to it. Okay, and then I just went and I sewed those 4 together and pressed them. And most of the seams, almost all the seams, I opened the seams because it was just a nice way for those to lay. And then so we've got 4 A blocks completed and 4 B blocks completed, and we'll go from there. This one I've got over by the machine, so it's closer, but you can see that I've already put my first row together, and go and make sure you 1/4 of an inch for your seam allowances. And I've got the second one, I've got the white one in between, and it's just basically making those seams. I've still got 1 more left to do, but what I wanted to show you was when I was talking about the 10.5 inch. Now when I look at those, that turned out really good. Once I sew it, it's gonna, and the nice thing about this, you've got some stretch in some of this, so it gives you a little room for pulling things or tugging them a little bit. So I'm going to take and put this one. Now remember that the purple's got to be on the left. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to lay them together, and if you'd like to pin, you can pin. I can tell these are going to be pretty close. But then what I did each time when I thought that I had it in really good shape, I always sewed it on the side that has the seams on it, because that way, as I sewed along, at my 1/4 of an inch, and I made sure these were together, then I could put my hand on it and the seam would stay open. And that was really helpful because you're going to do several of these pieces. And then when I open it up, there's my first row on an A block. And then I would add on my second one. I do the same thing. Make sure it's laying right with the big blocks there. Then the big block's going to be over there for the brown. I'm going to tip this over. And this one was one of the last ones that I just did. And it was just goofy between the sewing machine and the, just a sewing machine basically. But some of my seams are tipped over and to one side. But I turned it over so I could monitor that, and then make sure that my 10.5's coming out. Watch my 1/4 of an inch. It's so funny because this is one of those where you cut out all your patches first. And you see, it sounded like a funny combination, but it seems to be going together pretty good. It was the orchid, the brown, and the orange. Now we're going to pretend that we've made 4 A blocks and we made 4 B blocks. So what you want to do is you want to take 2 A's and 2 B's. All right, and you're going to do the same thing to these 4 blocks, but keep them separate, okay? You're going to take and draw a diagonal cutting line for the cutting line, and it's going to go, all 4 of them are going to go from the lower left to the upper right. And this would be called like A1, that's our one, that's the first one. And this would be called A2. So you'll need to see that, but you can tell they're different because this one is gonna, one is gonna have the large block on the bottom, but the other one's gonna have a square, 2.5 inch square, and the large one's going to be broken off. So this is the part 1 of the first block, and this is part 2. If you remember, there were 2 long rows, and they're going to have the corners on them, but then you're going to have to add the other 2 corners. All right, this is one of the corners, and this is one of those diagonal pieces. Look at where the big block is from the A, and then look over here. This was from the piece, and you can see that the long part runs up and down, but this is from your B section, okay? All right, so that will give you, you're going to do that twice, and you'll have, you're going to, and I'm going to show you the next other one in just a second. And then right here are the other 2 parts that you had, which were the A1 and B1. Again, look at the shapes and the way they sit, and then look at your pieces. That's probably the easiest way. And this is where that 14.5 inch piece comes. And if you look at it, you sew from here going down and here going down, and leave this on because that's the part that you're going to trim later. This is 2 of those corners, and you'll trim those later with a square or the way that you like to finish up the corners. And then this is back to the 2 long rows in the center. You can see your A1 and your B1, your B2 and your A2, and how they fit onto there, and then the 2 blocks that go in there. And that gets you to a very cute pattern. Then here would be another sample that you could look at that would give you some ideas of where they go, because you've got the 4 complete blocks. They're 10.5 inch blocks in the center, and then the other 4 blocks are used to make the corners on this quilt.